This is a BMW M3 lightweight. They only made 126 of these, and Paul Walker owned 5. And that's nothing compared to this collection of 49 Miatas, or this guy who owned over 200 Corvettes. Why would someone want multiples of the same car? Today we're gonna find out, starting with this very special BMW that we have right here. Paul Walker reportedly said the E36 Generation 3 Series was the best BMW ever, and he personally owned 5 identical E36 M3s. Those were not ordinary M3s. They were the LTW CSLs, also known as the lightweight. Unlike the ordinary E36 M3, the lightweight was a homologation car designed for the IMSA Firehawk series, and it was only available in the USA. The LTW was 200 pounds lighter than a regular M3 because it had no radio, no AC, no sunroof, manual cloth seats, and less insulation. It came with lighter forged wheels, aluminum doors, stiffer suspension, an adjustable front splitter, and a super tall rear wing for all that extra downforce. There were carbon fiber accents, unique badges, and it only came in one color, white with a checker flag livery. That livery let everyone know you had the raciest M3 that the US dollar could buy. The LTW also came with a box of parts designed for competition use only, and a letter warning owners that if you installed these parts, it'll void your warranty. This is one of the greatest BMWs ever made, and American buyers absolutely hated it. It was harsh, uncomfortable, too race car for most buyers. It also was $12,000 more than a regular BMW just for them to subtract stuff. That's about $95,000 in today's money. Dealers had a hard time selling these things and ended up marking them down with huge discounts. But Paul Walker wasn't the typical BMW buyer. To him, this car was the highest performing version of his most favorite BMW. That's why he owned 5. After he passed away in 2013, his M3s went up for sale and all sold for over $200,000. So this is not an LTW style wing, this is a GT style, and you may have noticed, this is not an LTW. This is a replica. You can't really get your hands on these things. They were sold as race cars, used as race cars, many were crashed, many were shipped overseas, and they're worth a lot of money now. So with that in mind, people make replicas because they look cool. Now, owning 5 identical cars might sound obsessive, but the next collection is twice as crazy because it's got a collection of 10 cars. And those 10 cars happen to be all McLaren F1s. The poster car of the 90s. You've probably heard of the owner of this collection as well because he's one of the richest people on the planet, the Sultan of Brunei. His entire car collection is so massive, he could drive a different car every day for 19 years. So it's no surprise that he has a few duplicates in that collection. But they only made 106 McLaren F1s ever, meaning he owns about 10% of all the F1s in the world. That's ridiculous. For over 10 years, the F1 held the record for the fastest production car at a confirmed 221 mile an hour. But there are numerous reports of the F1s going even faster, thanks to its 618 horsepower V12. 5 of the Sultan's cars are boring, ordinary F1s, but he also has an F1 LM, a special model built to celebrate McLaren's Le Mans victory. They only made 5 of them, and he owns 3. He also has 1 race-only F1 GTR, and he owns the road-going homologation version, the F1 GT. Both feature the characteristic extended rear bodywork, giving them the long tail nickname. That's 10 McLaren F1s. 10 McLaren F1s! And it's safe to say that none of these cars ever get driven because the Sultan of Brunei lets all of his cars rot. So it's maybe the saddest collection on this entire list. But I can pretty much guarantee all the cars from this next collection do get driven, or at least have been driven. And there's a lot more than 10 cars, because I'm talking about 17 Saturns. When you hear the word Saturn, you probably don't think of collector cars. You probably don't even think about cars, period, because the company hasn't existed since 2010. But we found a woman on the East Coast who loves these cars so much that she bought 17 of them, and they're all Saturn S-Series. Just for a little bit of context, Saturn was an offshoot of GM that called itself a different kind of car company. They started selling the S-Series in 1991 as an inexpensive American alternative to imported economy cars. They were all Pretty boring. But Saturn tried really hard to build a community around them. Every summer, they would hold a homecoming event at their Tennessee factory.
The Saturn Homecoming.
A giant party attended by as many as 50,000 Saturn owners. Buying a Saturn was like joining a freaking cult. But after 3 generations, the S series was replaced by the Ion, which was a huge problem for Saturn because the Ion wasn't really a Saturn. It shared a platform with other GM vehicles. By the mid-2000s, Saturn wasn't different anymore. And when the government had to bail GM out in 2008, Saturn, Oldsmobile, and Pontiac were all killed off to cut costs. Ultimately though, the humble S series was the only Saturn that was truly unique to the brand, which is why Jesse Lee Freeman says it's the only real Saturn worth collecting. Even though a lot of these cars were discarded, she says they deserve to be remembered. They are a part of automotive history from when a weird misfit company tried to do things a little bit differently. But if you think 17 of one car is a lot, this next collection is gonna blow your freaking mind because it's got 18. The comedian Gabriel Fluffy Iglesias has had a long connection with the Volkswagen bus, which is why he owns 18 of them. What's crazier is the warehouse he keeps them in. It's designed to look exactly like Volkswagen's factory in Wolfsburg, Germany. He calls it the Fluffy Museum. Every one of Fluffy's buses has been painstakingly restored. Each one is worth between $100,000 to $200,000. But that's not all. He also has 2 additional buses that have been converted into fish tanks to store his super rare fish collection. So, why does he love the VW bus so much? Well, his first car was a 1968 bus purchased with the help of his brother for about $400 when he was only the age of 16. That bus started a lifelong love for cars, and when his fellow comedian and car collector friend, Jay Leno,
welcome to Donut,
told him to invest in something that he loves, he chose a VW bus. And the Fluffy Museum isn't just a name. He plans to donate the entire collection and building to the city of Long Beach once he's passed away. But this next collection is something no city would ever want because it's a collection of one of the world's most hated cars, the Chevrolet Chevette. And this dude has managed to collect 27 of them. The Chevette exists because of the 1970s oil crisis. Americans wanted cheaper, fuel-efficient cars, and the Chevette was a bit like the Saturn of the 70s. It was the domestic alternative to cars like the VW Rabbit and the Honda Civic. At just $3,000 and 40 miles per gallon, it also seemed like a pretty good deal. The big problem with the Chevette is that it just wasn't very good. It was ugly, it had no features, and the base engine just made 53 horsepower. In other countries like Brazil, these were really popular and well received. Zach got to drive one of these Brazilian Chevettes a few weeks ago, so make sure you go check out that video if you haven't seen it already. But here in the US, the Chevette was a car no one really wanted. They just bought them because they were so cheap. So it's pretty surprising that someone would want 27 of these. But this guy, Roberto, isn't a regular car enthusiast. He loves Chevettes. It's a pretty familiar story. Just like with Fluffy, the Chevette was this guy's first car, which sparked a lifelong interest in cars. And now he can't pass up a cheap one whenever he sees one for sale. He describes the Chevette as a basic, simple, and honest car. They're super easy to work on, and every time he drives one or fixes it up, he feels 16 again. I don't really want to feel 16 again. I was super confused. Good for him, I guess. But you know what? 27 cars, just not absurd enough. This next collection is almost twice as nuts. It's a car we're super familiar with, the Mazda Miata. Jimmy is the most Miata-obsessed person that I know. He's owned 7 or 8 of these things.
Yep.
But one collector in Italy loves them so much more than Jimmy that he's owned 49.
Wait,
you
what?
lose. He decided to turn his whole collection into a Miata-themed resort called Miata Land, a luxury 5-star bed and breakfast. Each room is named after an iconic Miata color like Velocity Red and Sunburst Yellow and Mariner Blue. The door keys are modified Miata keys and the walls are decorated with Miata art. This is Jimmy's heaven. Miata Land claims to have the largest collection of Miatas in the entire world. It includes examples from every generation, including special editions like the 10th anniversary model, race cars, modified cars, and even an ultra rare pit crew modified example. Unlike collections that wind up in museums, these 49 cars are meant to be driven. Guests are provided with loaners from the collection and are free to tour the Italian countryside, cruising among the groves of olive trees, rolling vineyards, and historic villages. And just like the car, Miata Land is a freaking bargain at just 200 bucks a night. So the Miata is once again the answer, but this time the question is, where do you go instead of what you drive? Between them, those 49 Miatas have 200 cylinders. Go ahead and check my math, nerds. One of them has a V8 in it. So, that's nothing compared to this next collection, which has 900 cylinders. That's because this car collection includes 90 V10 powered Dodge Vipers, just like this one. Now you know why it's been sitting here the whole time. Unsurprisingly though, that collection lives in Texas, where the owners Wayne and Deanne are absolutely obsessed with the Dodge Viper. They started their collection in 2006 and by 2017 had accumulated 80 Vipers. Those include the limited Spider-Man edition and a custom Star Wars movie promotion car with Darth Vader airbrushed on the hood. It looks ridiculous. Their collection also includes a 2017 GTSR commemorative edition exactly like this one. Just 100 of these were made to celebrate the 25th and final year of the Dodge Viper. Rest in peace. This one is here in our studio because we're gonna be driving them in an upcoming video, so you're gonna wanna subscribe so you don't miss it. Wayne and Deanne's 81st Viper was the last customer car to roll off the assembly line when the Viper was discontinued in 2017. We've heard a rumor that their collection has continued to grow since then and now includes over 90 cars. But the best part of this Viper-obsessed couple is that they actually drive every single one of them. Every single one is maintained, registered, and insured for on-road use. They even park them so that any one of them can be taken for a spin at any time, except for their track-only ACRX model. Can't drive that on the street. Those Vipers have an estimated combined value of $7.5 million. They will not be selling a single one of them until the couple is simply too old to drive them. But somehow, hoarding 90 Vipers isn't even the most insane thing on this list. The final car I'm going to talk about is the Chevy Corvette. Unlike the lovely Texas Viper couple, our final collector doesn't drive every car in his collection. He's even publicly stated that one of his most expensive cars, which cost him $3 million, will never be driven. That's the very first C8 Corvette, which is joining a collection of 120 other Corvettes owned by car dealer mogul and one of the most successful NASCAR team owners of all time, Rick Hendrick. It's highly unlikely you'll ever get to see these cars in person because all of Hendrick's Corvettes live in his private museum, which only occasionally hosts limited attendance events. I actually have a buddy that got in one, and he has to keep all his photos in a private folder on his phone. One of the craziest things about Hendrick's 120 car collection is that it's not even the all-time largest collection of Corvettes. That honor goes to another car dealer, Bob McDormand, who at one time had amassed a mind-boggling 206 Corvettes. That's a lot of fiberglass. Among that collection included 12 then #1 cars. That means it's the first one off the production line of whatever model it is. It's also included cars previously owned by Dolly Parton, Burt Reynolds, Johnny Carson, and Mario Andretti. Sadly though, the collection was separated and auctioned off following McDormand's death in 2015. So why did Hendrick and McDormand collect Corvettes specifically? It's because the Corvette was instrumental to their success as car dealers. Both own dealerships known for selling more Corvettes than any other Chevrolet dealership in the world. And because of that success and their impressive collections, both of these men are in the Corvette Hall of Fame. That's at the National Corvette Museum in Bowling Green, Kentucky, which by the way, only has a measly 80 cars. Man, I wish I had a bunch of money because I would collect a bunch of old rare Subarus that no one cares about. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you like and subscribe and check out our merch. Go to donutmedia.com. Check out our other channel, Real Mechanic Stuff. And thank you again to Kaiser Cars for loaning this car to us because we're going to be driving this thing in an upcoming video. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Y'all have a good one.